Chair lays out HB 2848 and recognizes Chairman Darby to explain his bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. It's my honor to lay out House Bill 2848. 2848 seeks to optimize and improve the current process for planning transmission projects and obtaining a certificate of convenience and necessity of CCN at the Public Utility Commission for new transmission lines in Texas. As you know, the benefits of new and upgraded transmission lines are undeniable. Transmission lines are vital for reliability purposes. Lines deliver electricity to where it is most needed, whether that means delivering power to towns and cities across the state or moving power from one region to another. The goal of House Bill 2848 is to improve our overall transmission system to better equip the grid for reliability purposes, ease costly congestion, and deliver power to areas that need it the most. House Bill 2848 will fix the ERCOT transmission planning process and approval process that has plagued our grid and caused unnecessary inefficiencies. While we need to focus most of our attention on the need to build certain types of generation in the state, simply adding additional generation assets in Texas does nothing to help Texans if we do not also build the corresponding and necessary transmission line infrastructure needed to facilitate the movement of those electrons across our state. New transmission, some potentially on an expedited basis, focuses on meeting the needs of all regions of our state that demand power now. As filed, House Bill 2848 shortens the initial application process for a CCN from the current first anniversary of the date the application is filed to a newly proposed 181-day decision timeframe, which has wide support. It maintains the congestion cost savings test that we re-implemented last session for current and expected congestion levels and a project's ability to reduce those levels as criteria to be considered when examining new transmission projects. It requires the PUC to elevate other well-known and understood benefits of the transmission project, such as reduction of transmission losses and reduction of operating reserve costs. The bill will look at transmission costs and benefit over a longer timeline as other markets do. Also requires the PUC to consider solutions to relieve generic transmission constraints. The bill should also bolster efforts to reduce congestion costs on all consumers, which were $2.8 billion last year, members, according to the Independent Market Monitor. Finally, House Bill 2848 also requires that all new transmission projects operating at 350 kV be constructed as double circuit capable lines unless an exemption from double circuiting is requested by the electric utility. This is smart, look-ahead policy that will result in less land use and less permitting. We are working on a committee substitute that moves the high confidence load concept as in the file bill to C-1 and is phrased a load that has yet to sign an interconnection agreement. The substitute will also have cleanup language that refers to an at or below for the double circuit capable lines. Members, several leading oil and gas producers funded a comprehensive study on the need for additional electrification of the Permian and Delaware basins. The study shows that the basin will need to increase from 4.2 gigawatts to 17.2 gigawatts with a resulting 11.9 gigawatts, that being in ERCOT, by 2032. Those are staggering numbers. But this type of growth is not limited to those basins. We are seeing it all across Texas. We live in a fast-growing state and we have infrastructure needs in all corners of this state and for all types of consumers. The economic-driven project criteria reforms in House Bill 2848 will bring benefits to load in areas that need it the most. House Bill 2848 will deliver larger, more cost-efficient solutions to rapid growth, high-demand areas, including the Permian and Delaware basins, but also including the coastal port areas and the lower Rio Grande Valley. And similarly to areas like Taylor, where they're building semiconductor plants. Also, a big component of this effort is resiliency. New lines needed for load growth ultimately are reliability projects, because without them, the system can become unbalanced, unstable, or the load cannot be served under usual circumstances. Reforming this process will make the ERCOT grid more robust in extreme scenarios, heat, winter, hurricanes, et cetera, and minimize unforeseen circumstances. You're going to hear from some witnesses later that are trying to label this as simply CREZ 2.0. Well, I was here, and most of you were here when we had the CREZ process. This is not CREZ. It's not even close. All that narrative seeks to do is to divert attention away from those much-needed reforms we need here for all of Texas. Reforms that are long overdue. If they cannot win on facts, they seek to divide on misinformation. This bill is supported by the 6 major oil and gas companies, ConocoPhillips, Chevron, Devon, Diamondback, ExxonMobil, and Pioneer, who funded the market study, along with AEP Texas, CenterPoint, Oncor, and the Texas New Mexico Power, among the others. Thank you, members. I'll be happy to try to answer any questions you might have. I know there are a number of resource witnesses, and I'll stand ready for any questions if you have them. If not, I'd like to ask to reserve my opportunity to close.
Members, do you have any questions? Representative Gann.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This legislation contains language that seeks to limit the outage moratorium. What's the purpose of that?
Well, under current PUC rules, there has to be a 4-month period. Let me get my notes here, but I think it's through July through September, I believe. Excuse me. Here we go. During this period of time, transmission lines cannot be scheduled for planned maintenance between May 15th through September the 15th. While it is good that we have all the transmission lines in service during that period of time, it presents a challenge. If you need to actually have some maintenance, then clearly by having this time frame that there's a moratorium on doing that maintenance, it brings into question to me, do we have enough transmission to meet the reliability standard? If you don't even have time, if you have to schedule 4 months out of the year to maintain your assets, then it says to me that perhaps we don't have enough capability to do that. And it also limits interconnect agreements, that if these providers want to provide service to an actual site, they cannot, except with great difficulty, allow that interconnect agreement during periods when that wire is hot. So it limits service during those periods of time. So this is a protocol that the PUC has set in place, saying to these transmission companies, you can't maintain your lines during the period from May 15th to September the 15th.
Thank you.
And this bill is designed to bring more robust capabilities that will allow interconnect agreements during that period of time and yet allow for a process for them to repair their lines.
Other questions, members? All right, Chairman will give you the right to close.
Thank you.
Wayman Smith. Wayman, we have you listed as Director of Transmission Planning, AEP Texas, for HB 2848. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Hunter, Vice Chair Hernandez, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. As mentioned, my name is Wayman Smith, Director of Transmission Planning for American Electric Power. You may recall I testified before this committee last year to discuss some of the challenges and complexities of trying to plan the transmission system in Texas. As a part of that testimony, several recommendations were provided as examples of how to increase operational efficiencies, strengthen the reliability and resiliency of our transmission system, and provide economic development opportunities for regions of the state that are experiencing unprecedented growth in electric demand. House Bill 2848 by Representative Darby codifies these recommendations and includes some additional concepts that the transmission planning process is needed for some time. The bill will expedite the CCM timeline at the PUC from 12 months to 6 months, allow for additional criteria to be considered in determining the viability of a project, such as whether the project leads to a reduction in congestion, deferral of reliability upgrades, decreases transmission system losses, and operating reserve costs, as well as a reduction in generic transmission constraints. Additional transmission benefits like these are recognized and considered by other RTOs in other parts of the country. Additionally, House Bill 2848 allows for consideration of a project's ability to reduce the outage moratorium that we were just talking about. As Commissioner Darby explained, that May 15th to September timeframe, we have restrictions on our ability to get outages, and coupled with, and I'll talk about that in a minute, significant numbers of loads that want to be connected in a short period of time. It basically is taking those months, that time period out from our ability to perform that work. It also impairs our ability to make repairs and interconnect new projects unless we can do that work while energized, which obviously has safety as well as cost implications. AEP and other transmission owners in the state consistently receive inquiries from businesses, industry, and economic development offices seeking electric supply on a 1 to 2 year time frame. And unfortunately, the current process, even to rebuild a transmission line, takes 2 to 3 years.
That's your end.
Uh-oh.
So you're for the bill.
I am, sir.
Okay, and we got your sheet right here. Thank you. Members, you have any questions? We do have your information that's been passed out. Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you
very much. Jason Modlin. Jason, we have you with Texas Alliance of Energy Producers for HB 2848. Is that correct?
That's correct, Chairman.
Go right ahead.
Oil and gas producers rely on electricity to efficiently produce, process, and transport petroleum across this state, and we need this committee's help. The need has been clearly documented in the Permian in 2 studies, one in 2019 and one this past December. Both growth and efficient production requires more wires and poles. And yet, TDU's report relief is 5+ years away. Yes, there are added costs. We know infrastructure costs money. You have rightly invested in roads. You've made sure there's a level playing field to build pipelines. But with transmission, we need your help. We need your leadership. The cost of inaction is continued reliance on diesel generators to meet the needs of an industry creating the budget surplus. They rely on diesel generators delivered by a truck to power pump jacks, frac units, winterization efforts, emission controls, and water treatment. All of this adds cost, time delays, time down, manpower and maintenance needs. an unnecessary risk moving diesel on the road, sometimes over frozen roads. House Bill 2848 shortens the time it takes for transmission utilities to greenlight projects. That's what we need. We're appreciative of Chairman Darby bringing this bill and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. Any questions? Representative Anchia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question. You know, I've heard that the state's prior investment in transmission is somewhat maligned, but you know, if you could just bear with me on probably some marginal inaccuracy of this data. I think the state invested $8 billion roughly.
Yes, sir.
$8 billion, but the economic benefit to the state was about 40 billion, 38 billion. I mean, I'm an investor, you know, that's a deal that I take all day long. You know, and so I suspect with the current costs to the state and to consumers of congestion, that an investment now would yield pretty significant benefits down the line. Do you share that view?
Yes, sir.
And do you have any data on what an investment might, and if you don't, that's okay.
No, but I would.
I know you've studied this
Do
issue.
the S&P study that Chairman Darby referenced to look to both the needs now, but also the growth in the Permian Basin. They need the power.
Yeah, thank you.
Other questions, members? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman.
Tony Bennett. And Tony, we have you down as president, Texas Association of Manufacturers against 2848. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Go right ahead.
Thank you, Chairman Hunter and members. I am Tony Bennett, President and CEO of the Texas Association of Manufacturers. With all due respect to Chairman Darby, we must oppose House Bill 2848. As you know, in ERCOT, customers pay for all transmission costs. In last session, the legislature passed a very straightforward economic test for transmission in Senate Bill 1281. And basically, if a transmission line saves customers more than it costs, the line gets built. If it costs more than it would save customers in congestion, it doesn't get built, period. Economic transmission should not include consideration of benefits that are not primarily for other entities, including generators. Importantly, this bill is not about reliability projects, in our opinion. This bill exclusively addresses what should count as an economic project. The goal of many of these changes is to build expensive projects to alleviate renewable curtailments. The requirement to consider alleviating generic transmission constraints is meant to benefit renewable generation and not customers. Similarly, the requirement to levelize costs and benefits over a long period of time is meant to make projects seem economic that are actually not at all from the consumer standpoint. We support reasonable improvements to reliability planning, and we will be testifying today on a different bill that would speed up transmission to serve loads and to support reliability. If the legislature wants to expand reliability metrics, again, from a load-serving standpoint, we believe that is a different bill. So we ask you that you please oppose House Bill 2848. Thank you very much.
Questions, members? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Caleb Tash. Caleb, we have you with Diamondback Energy 4 HB 2848. Is that correct?
That is correct, Chairman.
Go right ahead.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to come in and speak today on this bill. My name is Caleb Tash. I am the Director of Safety and Sustainability at Diamondback Energy. So on top of handling all of our HSC and air emissions work, I also handle all of our infrastructure and our instrumentation and electrical work. So my folks are responsible for ensuring that we have enough power to drill our wells and complete them. We are here today in support of House Bill 2848. And we have three major reasons why. We believe that this bill helps all high-growth areas in the state. Certainly, I work and live in Midland, and the Permian is highly important to me, but we do believe this bill functions across the state, not just for the Permian. We also believe that this bill ensures that the TDUs do not have stranded capital, gives them the opportunity to plan ahead, gives them the opportunity to talk to customers so that those projects that are still 6-7 years out can be included in their planning process, whereas today, without a signed contract, those numbers are excluded from the planning process. The last thing that we really look for is trying to drive efficiencies in this process. As I just mentioned, as many of you know, these projects from start to end, some of these projects are 7+ years. Today, you've heard a couple of times already about this S&P Global study. We were part of that group that participated in that study. If you have not had an opportunity to review that study, I strongly encourage you to. The numbers are pretty staggering. What that study showed is that as of today, the Permian Basin specifically is already underserved. There is over 1 gigawatt of power that we could put onto the transmission lines today if the power was there. And there's another 4 gigawatts of power that we could put onto that transmission system within probably the next 12 to 18 months. We call those today projects because we would have to get our own infrastructure in place. I think, just to give you some real world examples, Diamondback has spent roughly $300 to $350 million over the course of the last 10 years on electrical distribution of our own. We own and operate 4 substations. We are currently building 2 more. Each and every one of those substations that we have needed to turn on to be able to drill and complete our wells, we have had to wait for that moratorium timeframe to be able to do so. Because there's, in my opinion, because there's not enough, you can call it redundancy or room for those opportunities. Today, in talking with the 3 of the companies that were also involved in that same study, Mount.
And you're for the bill?
Yes, sir.
Okay, any questions, members? Thank you, sir. Brent Bennett. Now, Brent, we have you listed as the policy director of the Texas Public Policy Foundation against HB 2848. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. Brent Bennett with the Policy Director for Life Power at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, testifying against the bill. Although we agree with Chairman Darby that this is not CREZ 2.0. This is a more refined bill and something that does address some real needs. And there's some parts of the bill that we think are appropriate. I think we share some of the concerns that that Mr. Bennett just expressed as far as the clause about relieving generic transmission constraints. We feel like a lot of the generic transmission constraints right now are caused by overbuilding of generation in certain areas and poor siting decisions. And we're very cognizant of, and in our support of cost allocation of interconnection in the Senate Bill 1287. We're very cognizant of trying to reduce those costs. So we're concerned about how that opens the door to increasing costs and also the levelized cost comparison. Also, we're concerned about how that might affect the cost benefit calculation that was refined last year or last session. Finally, we just want to emphasize, that there are some parts of this bill we like and that we could change our position based on correcting some of those things. And also that we want to bring the committee that, our main concern here is reducing transmission costs to customers across ERCOT, not just in certain regions, but across ERCOT. And over the last decade plus, transmission cost of service has more than doubled for consumers across ERCOT, and we're concerned about keeping that down. So that's what we came here to address. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank
Michelle Richmond. Michelle, we have you down as Executive Director of the Texas Competitive Power Advocates, neutral on HB 2848. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. Michelle Richmond on behalf of the Texas Competitive Power Advocates, and we are testifying on the bill. We've been working with Chairman Darby to address the concerns that we have and are going to continue to do so. I think the concern we have is that economic transmission planning should balance both the cost and the benefits of the proposed project, as well as the impact to reliability. And whether that's positive or negative, that should be a factor in the decision to move that forward. As drafted, the proposed test heavily favors the forecasted benefits without appropriately considering what the costs are going to be to consumers, as well as the impact to dispatchable generation. We've been talking a lot about reliability in this committee. I understand we're going to do that some more later on. So we just want to make sure that it is a reasonable test. The other concern we have is making sure that the cost estimates are accurate. And so we believe that there should be a cost cap that provides some allowance for potential problems with overages, but doesn't give a blank check. So if you approve a line that is projected to cost $100 million and you think that that is a reasonable cost to consumers for the benefits, that may not be the case if the line comes in after it's built at $400 million. So there needs to be an incentive to ensure that the estimates are accurate, or at least as accurate as they can be, to prevent those overruns and overspending. And so those are the concerns. We're going to continue to work with Chairman Darby to address those, and we appreciate y'all's consideration today.
Any questions, members? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jaron Taylor. Jaron, we have you down with Encore Electric 4HB 2848. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Go right ahead.
Thank you, sir, members of the committee. My name is Jaron Taylor. I'm here for Encore Electric. As you are aware, Encore Electric is the largest transmission distribution utility in the state. Its job, like all regulated utilities in the state, is to provide service first to the people of the state and second to the businesses of the state. When we're talking about large customers, that is primarily something that is done at a transmission level voltage. The changes that Representative Darby's bill does for an entity like us is it clearly articulates the standard that we have to meet in order to bring a transmission project forward. As it walks through the benefits of economic transmission projects, it provides some clarity and some context to what the Public Utility Commission must consider as it looks at these projects and they come forward. Our job is to provide service. In order to do that, we have to meet the standards that are before us, and we're grateful for the attempt in Representative Darby's bill to define those rules so we know what projects to bring forward. I would also add that several of the comments you have heard from the oil and gas industry about the need for additional transmission are absolutely true. We have severe needs across this state to add to those pieces, but as that goes forward, those projects, one, have to be justified, and two, there's a back-end check on those costs. The Public Utility Commission of Texas looks at our projects vigorously. And as the prior comments laid out, if projects come in over budget, there are very stern mechanisms to deal with that in this state that exists outside the confines of the changes here in Representative Darby's bill. We're supportive of it, and thank you for your time.
Any questions, members? Thank you very much. Larry Linenschmidt. And Larry, we have you down for yourself, and you're neutral on HB 2848, is that correct?
I'd like to change to positive.
Okay, so Larry, you're giving us permission to change the witness affirmation that you're here for yourself in support of HB 2848.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Go right ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Vice Chairman Hernandez, distinguished members of this committee. I'm Larry Lennon Schmidt. I'm speaking as an individual. I'm a theologically conservative Christian and a politically conservative voter. I'm here primarily to follow up on a conversation yesterday with Chairman Hunter with the nonpartisan Citizens Climate Lobby, which supports market-based practical solutions to our grid reliability issues. One of those primary concerns, of course, is transmission lines, which is why I'm in favor of Chairman Darby's bill. Our group and the citizens of Texas share concerns about reliable electricity and generation and delivery, affordable energy, continuing the Texas economic miracle, and lowering emissions. I'm here to offer our organization's volunteers who have many years' experience in varied fields, including the oil and gas industry, chemical engineering, and other endeavors related to the questions you are facing, to be of assistance to you. I understand a part of the work of this committee will be to advance your understanding of the grid by drawing on diverse opinions. Today, I would like to suggest some resources and witnesses to call for testimony. And if possible, I'd like to send these in digital format to the clerk of the committee so that they could be forwarded to you. They're in writing here, but some address the climate change issues that we're facing from the Texas State climatologist, including also another paper from many Texas scientists who teach from Texas Tech and many other schools. A paper titled The Impact of Renewables in ERCOT by Joshua Rhodes of University of Texas, and a report from the Renewable Energy as Backbone for Emerging Energy Technology in Texas by the Advanced Power Alliance, and a paper by Michael Weber, PhD from the University of Texas, which would address ways other than building power plants to increase grid reliability. The importance of clean energy is stressed in a letter from General Motors to the commissioners of the PUCT, another letter from other entities that need renewable energy and will go where the renewable energy is to meet their goals. Doug Lewin wrote a paper called What ERCOT Knows and Isn't Telling Us about the winter storm in December. At that time, Pablo Vargas wrote a letter to Secretary of Energy Granholm, request for an emergency order under Section 202 of the Federal Power Act, which ties into what happened during that time. And then there are others. And so I'd like to send these to the clerk to be advanced to the committee. And I'd like to recommend that you call on Michael Weber and Joshua Rhodes of the University of Texas, Doug Lewin, an energy consultant, and Daniel Cohen, PhD, and an environmental scientist and engineer at Rice University. If we can be of help to you at the Citizens Climate Lobby, please call on us. My contact information is on the sheet. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. And yes, get any information you'd like to get to the committee to our clerk. She will get it to the committee.
Yes, sir.
Members, any questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
John Gordon. John, we have you down registered for yourself in favor of HB 2848. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Go right ahead, John.
My name is John Gordon. I'm a registered professional electrical engineer. I support the language of this bill, which would then go to the PUC and give them direction. I have designed transmission lines. I'm probably the only remaining person in the state that's actually testified and stopped the 345 transmission line, Zenith to Salem. When I worked at the PUC, they did not have very good language as to what we were supposed to do. And as an engineer, it was my signature that basically got approval of transmission lines. It was my signature that blocked a transmission line that forced the LCRA to form the LCRA Transmission Line Supply Corporation. So I will have to compliment Mr. Darby, Representative Darby, on the language that's in there. It's good language that will give good advice to the people at the PUC, especially the engineers that have to decide many of these issues, or at least make recommendations. It'll help the legal staff there that has to hear it. And it will also allow the people that may oppose lines to present their case fairly and point out lines that are overbuilt or overexpensed or will not provide the benefit to the public. And so that's why I recommend that y'all support the language of this bill. It is good, solid, factual, engineering type language. And of course, if anybody'd like to hire me, I would be happy.
Thank you, John.
Thank you very much.
Any questions? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Cliff Lang. Cliff, we have you registered as General Manager, South Texas Electric Co-op, neutral on HB 2848. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Go right ahead.
Okay, thank you for having me. Again, Cliff Lange, General Manager for South Texas Electric Co-op. We are a generation and transmission cooperative serving 9 distribution members in South Texas, representing approximately 290,000 in-use members across that region. That being said, this bill in particular, there are good aspects of it, and there are aspects of it that would benefit STEC as a transmission owner and developer. But when we look at it from the context of our members' perspective, who must pay for the transmission costs that are associated with the transmission to development, we do have some very strong concerns about some of this. In terms of the good aspects of it, the one thing that Chairman Darby laid out is that it does create a deadline or a timeline as it pertains to getting the CCNs approved. And so that's a very good outcome. But anything that lowers the threshold to justify the construction of transmission projects is going to serve to cause transmission to increase very dramatically, and as a result of that, the cost to consumers to go up very dramatically. When we recently looked back at the last 10 years, we've seen about an 8.5% average annual growth rate in terms of the cost of transmission in the state. It's in essence doubled over the course of the last 10 years, actually more than doubled in that regard. So that being said, our specific concerns are that evaluating the costs and benefits over the life of the transmission project, as you've heard already today, is really too long of a process. As a result, what you end up seeing is you see that it makes it very easy for some of these investments to be justified, but it becomes very subjective once you get out beyond 3 to 5 years. ERCOT has to make assumptions in terms of where those new generators will be located, where new loads will be located, and as a result of that, it makes it a very subjective process that could prove out a transmission project that may not actually be beneficial to end-use consumers over the life of that project. The evaluation of high growth areas, well, I understand why that's being discussed as part of this particular bill. The concern is really already taken care of. We do have provisions in the process at ERCOT to really look at those. If you look at the Odessa area, that is one area that's actually given a little bit more latitude in terms of determining whether or not that area actually needs additional transmission. In terms of making lines double circuit capable, again, a very good aspect of the bill. I don't know that it's particularly necessary because ERCOT does go ahead and request whenever they approve a project to be moved on to the Public Utility Commission that those be designed so that they are double circuit capable. So all a mixed bag of things in this bill, but we are on it and would look forward to having additional discussion on it.
Thank you, sir. Any questions?
Chairman.
Yeah, Representative Raymond.
I think I need to pose this to you regarding this witness, but a parliamentary inquiry. Can I state my inquiry? Sure. Would it be appropriate for me to ask this witness about a letter that I sent him recently, and I know that Chairman Gann, I think, is sending one as well, regarding some transmission lines that are going to be going through Duval County, or should I ask the witness offline and not during this?
I think it's best to go offline so that the subject matter would be clear. So I would ask that you do it off.
So to be clear, I'll ask the witness later if he can let me know if he's gotten the letter that I sent him and that Chairman again is sending him about the transmission lines going through Duval County on 359 so that they don't go down that route. I'll ask him about that later. Is that right?
That's correct, and I want you to go by his office and Chairman Guillen's office to discuss.
Absolutely. Will do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir. Michael Lozano. Michael, we show you on behalf of Permian Basin Petroleum Association 4 HB 2848. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes,
Go
sir.
right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, my name is Michael Lozano, and I'm with the Permian Basin Petroleum Association. I want to thank you all for your time here today. I'll be brief. I think a lot of things have been said, and we want to be very clear. We're fully supportive of this bill. I think 2 years ago, Mr. Chairman, Darby actually asked us to get on board, and I think he led these horses to water, but I can tell you today we're here to drink. We fully support this bill, and we want to be clear that the cost of inaction here is high. It is one that is real, and it is one that is born for operators. And I think if we talk about the story of the Permian Basin, we're talking about one that began with a small, humble legacy field producing 500,000 barrels a day in 2013, now producing 5.5 million barrels a day in 2023, and on track to produce 6 million barrels by the end of the year. This is a huge opportunity for us to talk about our needs, and we appreciate the venue for that, and of course, Chairman Darby for bringing that bill. I think it's pretty clear that this agency needs direction in determining how best to build out these transmission lines, and I think this bill affords us the best, most comprehensive method for doing that. It's pretty clear that the current system doesn't work. I think Mr. Tash noted that by saying with 1 gigawatt of power unmet, or transmission unmet in the Permian Basin today, it's pretty clear the current system isn't working. And if insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, I ask that we not be insane. I think it's important for us to be very clear about this bill being a comprehensive benefit to the activities in the Permian Basin. And we know that this is going to be something that we want to see happen. And this is something that members, both large and small, see benefits from. In addition to the added benefits of having gridded activity versus diesel generators running activities in the field, I want to recognize that this is not just an emissions benefit, which is significant and one that we want to achieve. It's also pretty clear that we want to see something about a clear conversation about ensuring that this is an added benefit for reliability as well. We spent a lot of time last session talking about ensuring we have reliability out in the natural gas electric supply chain. Instead of having an operator with 180 diesel generators out in the field, we can grid these activities and have a more reliable operation and footprint that benefits the natural gas and electricity supply chain in the state. Our members have invested hundreds of millions of dollars in distribution and in these substations, and that's great. But I think we would also benefit, frankly, from having these transmission lines, and so we fully support this bill. I want to thank you for the opportunity to testify before today, and happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, members? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, members, we don't have any other witness affirmations. So is there anyone else who wishes to speak on, for, or against the bill? If not, Chair recognizes Chairman Darby to close on his bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate all the input. A couple of notes here. SB 1281, which we did in the 87th session, last session, that is not and was not intended to be a long-term solution to our transmission woes. This is an attempt to do just that. There are currently 16 GTCs. There's a question about GTC, and only recently did they try to resolve the one in the Rio Grande Valley. This is simply indicates to me and to the PUC that there's a problem with delivery of electricity in parts of the state that we need it. I will tell the chairman that we know about the load growth potential in the Permian and Delaware Basin. I represent the Permian Basin. This is not a bill about the Permian Basin. This is a bill about the state of Texas. In fact, the Gulf Coast region probably has, I've been led to believe, may have as much or more growth potential to it. So this is about establishing a transmission policy that works for the whole state. Renewable this, renewable that. I'm tired of that. That's a scare tactic. It's clear that oil and gas supports this measure. And I will close by saying that every other RTO looks further out than the 3 to 4 years to measure costs and benefits. That's ridiculous to think that the horizon to look at the cost and benefits is limited to 3 to 4 years. So with that, members, I'll answer any questions you have. If not, I'll close.
Any questions, members? Speaker Guerin, is your light on? Did you have
No,
a
sir,
question?
it's not.
Okay.
If it is, I'm sorry. I
Okay,
didn't mean
no
for it to
problem.
be.
Any questions, members? Thank you, Chairman Darby. The chair moves to leave HB 2848 pending at this time. Is there any objection? Hearing none, HB 2848 is left pending.